I'm Michael, 35 years old. Well, from the outside, my life looks like a golden cage. I live with my mother, Sophia, who is 60 and owns a large factory. I am the manager of that factory. Financially, yes, we are among the affluent class that society calls wealthy. But prosperity isn't everything. My problem is my mother. Mom has a big dream, my marriage to Emily. Emily is 30, my mother's sister's daughter. Her family is rich like ours. And Mom thinks marrying Emily means stabilizing our status and reputation. But the problem is that Emily, oh my God, she is so arrogant and conceited. Every time I see her, I feel like she's looking down on me. Over the years, Mom tried hard to make us fall for each other. Mandatory dinners, planned trips, but it was useless. Love can't be forced. Mom would say, "Michael, Emily is the only suitable choice. Only she can be your life partner." But I didn't feel that way. Then, a small incident happened. The previous housekeeper had a problem and had to leave the city permanently. Mom had to look for someone new. After some searching, Sarah, 32, came to work. Sarah was the exact opposite of us. She lived alone, having lost her parents a few years ago in an accident. It was clear she was from the poorer segment of society and lived in an old house. But Sarah had something else. She was kind, warm-hearted, and forgiving. Unlike everyone else I had seen around me, Sarah was real. From the first day she came to the house, she caught my attention. More every day. Slowly, I realized that the only person I wanted to spend my life with was Sarah. Yes, I was truly in love with Sarah, but I didn't dare tell anyone, because I knew my mother would never accept her son marrying a poor girl who was not our equal. If she found out, all hell would break loose. But my decision was serious. I was willing to endure any trouble to marry Sarah. Time passed, and it was Sarah's birthday. I couldn't ignore it. I bought her a gold necklace. Simple, but beautiful. Mom was shocked when she saw it. "Michael, you buy such an expensive gift for the housekeeper? What are you doing?" I heard her objection, but I didn't care. Mom, who is very food conscious, insisted Sarah go to an international cooking class. Sarah agreed. And who always drove Sarah back and forth? Me. I didn't want her to go alone. These behaviors made Mom suspicious. I could feel her sharp, curious glances. Emily, who would come to visit Mom at home, also noticed my behavior with Sarah and became suspicious. So she decided to do something. She was looking for an opportunity to humiliate Sarah and make me understand that Sarah was just a poor, miserable housekeeper, and I should forget this ridiculous interest. One night, while setting the dinner table, Sarah's hand slipped, and a dish fell and broke. Sarah was very upset and ashamed. Emily seemed to be waiting for this moment. She spoke to Sarah in a terrible tone and yelled about how clumsy she was. I couldn't stand it. I went toward Emily and said, "Emily, what's the matter? A simple accident happened. A dish broke. The world hasn't ended. You have no right to humiliate Sarah over something worthless." It was always customary for Sarah to eat in the kitchen while we, Mom, me, and sometimes Emily, sat at the dining table in the living room. It was an unwritten rule. The servant does not sit at the master's table. But that night, my patience had run out. Mom and Emily were seated, and Sarah was bringing the last plates. I told her, "Sarah, sit down, have dinner with us tonight." Sarah froze. She turned pale. I knew what was going on in her heart. She knew that neither Mom nor Emily was willing to share a meal with a poor girl. She quickly said, "Thank you, Mr. Michael. That's kind. Please allow me to be in the kitchen as usual." But I didn't back down. It was as if a switch had flipped in my mind. No, you are sitting here tonight. Don't argue. After much hesitation and back and forth, Sarah finally sat down shyly. Mom, although displeased, didn't object. Perhaps because she didn't want to fight with me in front of Emily. But Emily couldn't stand it. Her face contorted as if she had seen an insect in her food. Emily said, "Michael, what is this now? Sarah, why are you here? Please, go and have your meal in the kitchen." Without taking my eyes off Sarah, I said, "Emily, from now on, Sarah will eat at our table, period." Emily lost control. She stood up, raised her voice, and angrily said, "I will absolutely not sit at the same table with a wretch like Sarah." She shoved her plate aside hard and grabbed her purse. This move was a declaration of war. Emily angrily left the house. At that moment, it was proven to both Mom and Emily I was not just interested in Sarah, I was in love with her. Mom, realizing the situation was out of hand, made her decision. This interest must be suppressed right here. Sarah had to go. A few days later, I was at a friend's house. Mom seized the opportunity. Sarah came to work, and Mom, without any preamble, told her, "You're fired. You have no right to step foot in this house again." Sarah said how upset and heartbroken she was. She had no choice but to pack her belongings and leave forever. When I returned home and didn't see Sarah, my world collapsed. I worried. I thought something bad had happened to her. Mom said with frightening nonchalance, "I fired her. I wasn't satisfied with her work." I couldn't believe it. I was upset, very upset. Mom quickly replaced her with a new worker and was happy that she had severed my connection with Sarah. Emily was probably happy too, but I couldn't let everything end. Without telling anyone, I found Sarah's address. I went to her and offered her a job as a secretary at my factory. I knew this was the best way to maintain our relationship. A few days passed. One day, Emily felt like visiting the factory. When she saw Sarah behind the secretary's desk, she was stunned. She was shocked. She immediately called Mom and reported the incident. Mom, Sophia, rushed to the factory like a rocket. Her eyes were burning with anger. She came into the office and started shouting at me for hiring Sarah. The factory belonged to Mom, and I couldn't prevent Sarah's firing. Mom ruthlessly fired Sarah in front of the workers. Mom's shouting was so loud that all the workers understood what the fight was about. Sarah was humiliated again, and under the heavy, curious gazes of the workers, lowered her head and left the factory forever. My whole being was on fire. I couldn't let Mom destroy my love so easily. I went into Mom's office. I yelled at her. I said, "If Sarah doesn't come back to work, I will never step foot in this factory again. I'll leave forever." Mom knew that I was the factory manager and that everything would stall without me. She had no choice but to concede. But Mom Sophia was very cunning. She agreed to let Sarah return, but not to the factory. She said she must return to the house as a housekeeper. She thought this way she would keep Sarah close and cut off the intimate connection between Sarah and me. She felt more comfortable with Sarah under her surveillance. And that's how Sarah reluctantly returned. But Mom wouldn't give up. Her goal wasn't just to cut off the relationship. She wanted to remove Sarah from my life forever. She devised a plan to marry Sarah off to someone else so I would be forced to forget her. She spoke to a factory worker named Lucas. Lucas was 35 and good-looking. Mom asked him to make Sarah fall in love with him, marry her, and drive me out of the picture. She promised to make Lucas wealthy in return. Lucas, who had his eyes on wealth, gladly accepted. One evening, Sarah was returning from our house. Lucas was waiting for her halfway with a large bouquet of red roses. Lucas stepped forward, gave the bouquet to Sarah, and said he had fallen in love with her and wanted to marry her. His face looked slightly familiar to Sarah. Lucas quickly said he was a factory worker and had seen Sarah there and fallen in love. Sarah, who was very lonely and impressed by Lucas's good looks and loving words, accepted his proposal. Their relationship started that very night. Lucas was good at his job. He expressed his love and affection from morning till night and constantly bought gifts to make Sarah crazy about him. Sarah was happy with all this attention. Seeing Sarah constantly talking and chatting on the phone at home, I grew suspicious that she was involved with a man, but I wasn't sure yet. I became sadder every day. Mom, Sarah, and I were sitting around the dinner table. The intercom rang. Sarah wanted to go answer, but I said, "No, you eat your food. I'll go." I left the house. A delivery person was at the door and said he had a package I needed to pick up. The delivery person handed me a gift and a large bouquet of roses from Lucas for Sarah. It was all Mom's plan. She wanted me to realize that Sarah was taken and to stop pursuing her. When I took the bouquet, there was a note attached to it. With trembling hands, I read it. Lucas had expressed his love and happily written that they would soon get married. I realized my suspicion was not unfounded. Sarah was going to become someone else's wife. Suddenly, the whole world spun around me. I was so shocked and under so much stress that I felt my blood pressure drop. I fainted right there at the door. Sarah and Mom quickly called an ambulance. I was admitted to the emergency room. Mom was upset that I was ill, but deep down, she was happy that her plan had worked out well. I was only regretful that I hadn't expressed my feelings for Sarah sooner. I told myself that if I had said it, things would never have reached the point where Sarah was going to marry someone else. But it was too late. I had no choice but to forget Sarah. Right there in the hospital, I told Mom, "I don't want to see Sarah. Get another housekeeper to replace her." Mom was happy with this request. She thought I had finally come to my senses. She quickly brought someone else to replace Sarah. Sarah also went to work somewhere else. Sarah's absence in the house was torture for me, but I knew I had no choice but to endure these conditions and forget her. Some time passed. The separation from Sarah was driving me crazy. Finally, I decided to go back to the factory. I thought maybe I would get busy with work and could forget Sarah more easily. I arrived at the factory and went toward the management office. I was about to enter when I saw the door was ajar and I heard Mom and Lucas talking. They were both happy and laughing. I became suspicious. How could Mom be so friendly with an ordinary worker? I leaned against the door and listened. The voices were clear. Mom was thanking Lucas. She was saying how well Lucas had managed to make Sarah fall in love with him, according to the plan, and consent to marriage. She promised that after the marriage, she would not only make Lucas wealthy, but also promote him to foreman in the factory. Suddenly, the world spun around me. A plan, the whole affair, the bouquet of roses and Sarah's marriage, was a ridiculous show designed by Mom to separate us. Lucas was just a puppet, moving with the promise of money. My blood boiled. I angrily slammed the door open and jumped into the middle of the room. Mom and Lucas were both shocked. I yelled at both of them. Without giving Lucas a chance to speak, I grabbed his collar and with absolute fury threw him out of the room. Lucas, seeing that his cover was blown, ran away in fear. I turned back to Mom. Finally, after all this time, I spoke my heart. I said, "Mom, I love Sarah. I want to marry her. Do you understand? I love her." Mom started shouting. She said, "If you marry that poor girl, I will take all your wealth from you. I won't give you a penny." I looked her in the eye and said, "Even if you take all my wealth, I will still not give up on marrying Sarah." She started brainwashing me. She said, "Sarah doesn't want you for yourself. She's after your money and wealth. Her only goal is to become rich." But her words were worthless to me now. I knew Sarah. She was different from others. I quickly went after Sarah. I told her the whole truth, how Lucas had played a dirty game to separate us. Then I confessed how much I loved her and asked her to marry me. Sarah, realizing what kind of plot was at work, understood that I was the only suitable option. She accepted. Sarah did not sit idly by either. She went to confront Lucas. She said she reacted with full anger, asking how he could deceive her and play with her feelings. Mom also carried out her threat. She took all my wealth from me. I was no longer allowed to work in the factory. She took back the expensive car she had bought for me, which was registered in her name. She also blocked our joint bank account so I couldn't take a penny. She put me under tremendous financial pressure to make me give up, but I had already made up my mind. I left our house forever and cut ties with Mom. With the meager savings I had, we decided to start our life together. Emily was not giving up either. She came to Sarah. With complete shamelessness, she offered Sarah a large sum of money so she would never have financial problems again if she left me. Sarah firmly refused. She was not willing to sell me for money. This proved that Emily and Mom were wrong. Sarah and I got married and moved into Sarah's old, small house. To be honest, living in that small, old house was difficult for me, who had always lived in a palace, but my love for Sarah made it bearable. I started looking for a job. I went to different companies and filled out many forms. A few companies were willing to hire me. I chose the best one and started working. After years of being the manager of my own factory, I now had to work as a simple employee for others. It was hard, very hard, but I endured everything for Sarah. After the marriage, I thought the hardest days of my life were over. But I was wrong. A while later, Sarah became ill. The doctor said she needed long-term, multi-year treatment. The costs were staggering. With my employee salary, we couldn't even afford a few months' expenses, let alone a few years. Sarah, despite her illness, wouldn't quit working. She didn't want to put the heavy burden of treatment solely on me. But I saw how much she was suffering, and there was nothing I could do. One day, as I was crossing the street, a drunk driver who had completely lost control of the car hit me hard. I opened my eyes and found myself in the hospital. My friend, who was the manager of that hospital, quickly came to my bedside. My legs were broken and had to be in a cast for a few months. That's when a crazy idea came to me. I knew that if Mom realized Sarah didn't want me for my money, she would eventually accept me. But my goal was not wealth. My goal was only the money for Sarah's treatment. With wealth, I could save her again. There was another bad news. The doctor said that due to the severity of the accident, I might be paralyzed from the waist down and be forced to use a wheelchair for the rest of my life. This was my golden opportunity. I begged my friend, the hospital manager, to help me. We had to pretend I was paralyzed. I had to stage the greatest test of love for Sarah and Mom. After being discharged from the hospital, Mom, Sophia, couldn't bear to leave me alone in that small house. She came and took Sarah and me to the mansion. She wanted to take care of me herself, but she still wouldn't accept Sarah as her daughter-in-law. She still said my paralysis was Sarah's fault. If I hadn't married her, this wouldn't have happened to me. Sarah was the angel of my life. She did everything for me. She soothed my pain. Every day she took me out in the wheelchair, taking me to the park to lift my spirits. She never grew tired, not even for a moment. After a while, I started my plan. I told Sarah, "Sarah, I don't want you to spend the rest of your life with a paralyzed man. You need to be happy. I am willing to divorce you, and I will marry Emily." Sarah cried like a spring cloud. She begged me not to divorce her. She tearfully reminded me that even if I remained paralyzed for the rest of my life, she wouldn't leave me. At the same time, Mom happily went to Emily. She said, "Emily, this is the best opportunity. Michael wants to divorce Sarah and marry you." But Emily's answer hit Mom like a sledgehammer. Emily said, "What? Me? Marry a paralyzed man? No, I am not willing to spend my life in hardship." Mom was very upset by Emily's words. In fact, Emily's words eliminated all of Mom's doubts. One day, Sarah had taken me to the park and Mom was with us. We were near the street when a woman was distracted by her phone, and her baby stroller, which was on a sloping street, started moving. It was gaining speed and heading toward the main street where cars were speeding. The woman screamed and ran, but couldn't reach it. At that moment, there was no time to hesitate. I had to reveal the whole truth. I immediately got up from the wheelchair. I ran. Sarah and Mom were both frozen. With wide eyes, they watched me run. With great speed and difficulty, I reached the stroller and prevented it from moving on to the main street. The child's life was saved. Everything was over. Sarah and Mom looked at me with eyes full of tears and astonishment. I said, "I wasn't paralyzed. It was all a game. With the help of my friend, the hospital manager, I pretended to be paralyzed to prove it to you, Mom. To prove that Emily and women like her want me for my wealth. But Sarah, even seeing me paralyzed, refused to leave me. She wants me for myself." At that moment, everything was proven to Mom. She had nothing left to say. She hugged me. She accepted Sarah as her daughter-in-law. Mom returned all my wealth to me, and I started working as a manager at the factory again. The root that Mom wanted to pull out of the ground was now stronger than ever, because true love had watered it. All the stories I share on my channel are written by me, and unlike other YouTube channels, they are not copied. So I would appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to my channel to motivate me to write new stories.